45 senators voted the impeachment trial against former President Trump is unconstitutional. What does that mean for the odds of conviction? President Biden took office in a flurry of executive orders. 6 days later, Texas has pushed back. A federal judge has temporarily blocked Biden's deportation freeze. And Biden's pick for Commerce Secretary says she's open to amending Section 230. Trump had repeatedly called for Congress to repeal Section 230. The law protects big tech companies from liability for users' content. Tune in to Deep Dive as we explore these topics and more. Hello and welcome. This is Deep Dive and I'm Tiffany Meyer. Let's kick off with an update on the impeachment trial. The Senate trial has been delayed till next month. It's the first time a non-sitting president will face such a trial. And some Republicans are arguing against the lawfulness of holding a trial for a former president. Senator Rand Paul forced the Senate to vote on whether or not it's constitutional for the Senate to hold a trial of a private citizen, since Trump is no longer in office. He called it a partisan vendetta against a man no longer in office. 45 senators have voted that the trial is unconstitutional, so it's unlikely the Senate will impeach Trump. 5 Republican senators sided with the Democrats. That means if the numbers stay the same for the actual impeachment trial, Trump won't be convicted, since the Democrats need at least 17 Republican senators to side with them to successfully convict Trump. Trump is the first president to be impeached twice, and the first president to undergo an impeachment trial after leaving office. Immediately after the vote, Senator Rand Paul wrote on Twitter that the trial is dead on arrival at the Senate. Senator James Lankford voted to support Paul's point of order on the constitutionality of the trial of a former president. He issued the following statement, saying, "This is not a trial. This is a political theater. You cannot remove someone from office who is already out of office. In this trial, there is no current president, no chief justice, and no possibility someone could be removed from office because they are not in any office. In a moment when our nation needs to unite, this trial will only create even deeper divisions." The trial is set for next month, but the U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts won't preside over it. He says he's not interested in presiding over another Senate impeachment trial against former President Trump. Instead, Senator Leahy will preside over the trial. As Senate pro tempore, he's next in line after the Chief Justice. Leahy issued a notice on Monday saying the President pro tempore has historically presided over Senate impeachment trials of non-presidents. He pointed out that in this role, the President pro tempore has an extra special oath to, quote, do impartial justice according to the Constitution and the laws. He said it's an oath he takes extraordinarily seriously. Senator Leahy has returned home after being evaluated at the hospital last night. He was taken to a hospital after saying he was not feeling well. Hours earlier, Leahy was presiding over the start of the Senate impeachment trial. According to his spokesperson, Leahy was first examined in the Capitol by the attending physician. Then he was sent to a local hospital out of an abundance of caution. He returned home later last night after further examination and receiving test results. We don't know the nature of his condition or which hospital he was at. Leahy, aged 80, has just recently become the Senate pro tempore. It's a role often given to the majority party's longest-serving member. President Biden told CNN the impeachment trial has to happen, but he doesn't think Trump will be convicted. Biden took office in a flurry of executive orders. 6 days later, Texas has pushed back. A federal judge has temporarily blocked Biden's deportation freeze. U.S. District Judge Drew Tipton is issuing a temporary restraining order blocking Biden's 100-day deportation freeze for 14 days across the country. Tipton is an appointee of former President Trump. This comes 2 weeks after Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton sued the Biden administration over the policy. Paxton touted the success on Twitter, writing, "Within 6 days of Biden's inauguration, Texas has halted his illegal deportation freeze." He also called Biden's executive order a seditious left-wing insurrection. Paxton said last week that the DHS failed to consult with Texas before making its immigration policy changes, as is required per an agreement between Texas and the agency. The Biden administration has proposed a number of changes to immigration policy, including a plan to give citizenship to around 11 million undocumented immigrants. Last week, Biden also signed an executive order halting all U.S.-Mexico border wall construction. Texas Representative Henry Cuellar says the construction will stop Tuesday night. The Trump administration had obtained billions of dollars in funding to construct the wall. Over the last 4 years, amid legal and congressional battles, about 450 miles of the wall were built along the border. The border wall is one success former President Trump often touted. He said in a surprise speech at the section of the wall in Alamo, Texas, before leaving office,
"We've worked long and hard to get this done. They said it couldn't be done, and we got it done. One of the largest infrastructure projects in the history of our country."
He spent years bargaining and battling with Democrats to secure funding for the project amid a surge in illegal crossings over the border with Mexico. Trump credited the wall with a plunge in illegal crossings, including people with criminal records, such as murder. During Trump's term in office, Democrats and immigration activists often filed lawsuits attempting to obstruct Trump's immigration policies. Now that he's no longer in office, several former Trump DHS officials are expressing alarm over the new administration's approach. Former U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Mark Morgan told Breitbart just days after inauguration, "With the stroke of a pen, President Biden made this country less safe." He added, "It's pure politics over public safety." Morgan said he believes the administration didn't speak to experts with the Border Patrol about which policies should remain. He cited executive orders ending the Migrant Protection Protocol, also known as the Remain in Mexico program, as well as one that ended the border wall construction. Morgan said he was frustrated with what was happening, calling it all about politics. He said our country's less safe because of it. So was the wall effective? Let's take a look at Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE's, statistics from last year. ICE reported 103,603 administrative arrests, down 28% from 2019. ICE added that 90% of the administrative arrests involved people with a prior conviction, and the agency said it contributed to 4,360 criminal arrests in 2020. The pandemic played a role in the number of ICE arrests, but either way, the number has been in decline since 2018. ICE reported 158,851 arrests for that year. Of those, 90% had criminal convictions. It was an 11% increase over 2017. With Paxton's lawsuit leading the way, it's likely that Republicans may do the same, especially with hundreds of judges appointed by the former president. Trump's speech at the border wall got him suspended from YouTube. That's after Twitter and Facebook also banned him from their platforms. And now Facebook is finding itself in hot water. Senator Ed Markey is calling out Facebook. He says the platform is still recommending political groups to users, despite a pledge from the CEO that it would no longer do so. Markey told Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg in a letter that he failed to meet agreed-upon commitments. Markey expressed his belief that Facebook's recommendation system is a threat to American democracy and public safety. He says many Facebook groups breed hate, spread misinformation, and act as venues for coordinating violence, including for the U.S. Capitol breach. Markey says Facebook doesn't just allow these groups to exist, but actively recommends them to users to join. Markey cited a 2016 internal presentation that showed 64% of extremist group joins were due to recommendation tools, such as groups you should join. Zuckerberg told Markey during a Senate hearing on October 2020 that Facebook had stopped recommendations that deal with politics or social issues ahead of the election. Facebook vice president said in a blog post following the Capitol breach that the company has had emergency measures in place since before the U.S. elections, like not recommending civic groups for people to join. But the markup found that Facebook was recommending political groups throughout December. Markey noted the report and said the findings cast serious doubt on Facebook's compliance with the promises they have made to me and users. He wrote, "Therefore, I request a detailed explanation of this apparent inconsistency between your commitments and your platform's practices, as well as a detailed review of the steps you are currently taking and plan to take to stop Facebook from recommending political groups to its users." Facebook didn't respond to a request for comment. On the issue of big tech, President Joe Biden's pick for Commerce Secretary says she's open to amending Section 230. The law protects big tech companies from liability for users' content. Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo was questioned about reforming Section 230 during her confirmation hearing. She told Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson that she agrees reform is needed. The law is part of the Communications Decency Act, now a hot topic amid rising concerns over social media censorship. Raimondo said if confirmed, she would put resources at the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, or NTIA, towards discussing potential reforms. The agency is part of the Commerce Department and responsible for advising the president on telecommunications and information policy issues. Both the Biden and Trump administrations have criticized Section 230 for different reasons. Republicans accuse big tech companies of unbalanced policing of user content on social media platforms, stifling conservative viewpoints and free speech. Democrats argue the companies aren't doing enough to counter misinformation and hate speech. While in office, Trump had repeatedly called for Congress to repeal Section 230, the federal law that protects tech giants from being held liable for user-posted content. Trump and his administration repeatedly underscore the risks of unbalanced policing of user content on social media platforms, claiming that many big tech companies are engaging in conduct that limits conservative viewpoints and stifles free speech. While publishers can be held liable for any content they post, social media platforms are protected by Section 230, which states that no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. And since it's Holocaust Remembrance Day, let's end with a quote by Holocaust survivor and Italian chemist Primo Levi. He wrote in his memoir, "Monsters exist, but they are too few in number to be truly dangerous. More dangerous are the common man, the functionaries ready to believe and to act without asking questions." A charity in the UK, funded by the UK government to promote and support the Holocaust Memorial Day, launched a campaign. It's called Be the Light in the Darkness. The charity says it's important to remember the atrocities committed, but it's even more important to ensure it doesn't happen again. The initiative calls for people to mark the day by lighting a candle. Organizers say the goal is to encourage everyone to reflect on the depths humanity can sink to, but also the ways individuals and communities resisted that darkness to be the light before, during, and after genocide. But what do you think? What are some ways to be the light? Let me know below. Thanks for tuning in to Deep Dive. I'm Tiffany Meyer, and see you soon.